Why do you think you keep ending up with the same kind of guy? Seriously, think about it for a second. Different names, different faces, maybe even different jobs. But the story, it's the same. You start off feeling excited, like you've finally met someone who gets you. But a few months in, you're left with that same sinking feeling, wondering what you did wrong. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Attraction isn't just about who they are. It's about what you allow, what you accept, and the standards you unconsciously set for yourself. The wrong men aren't some random curse that fell on you. They're patterns you've unknowingly been repeating. But patterns can be broken. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how. Let me tell you something that most people never stop to think about. That feeling you call chemistry. That lightning bolt, that rush that makes you believe you've finally met the one. It's not what you think it is. It feels magical, intoxicating even. But here's the problem. Chemistry on its own has fooled more people into heartbreak than almost anything else in dating. The truth is, chemistry does not equal compatibility. And until you understand the difference, you'll keep finding yourself caught in the same painful cycle, excited in the beginning, confused in the middle, and disappointed by the end. Think about the last time you felt that instant connection. You saw him, you talked to him, and within minutes it felt like you'd known him forever. He said all the right things. He laughed at your jokes. You couldn't stop thinking about him when you went home. And in your head, you started creating this story about what your life together could be. But here's what you probably didn't stop to ask. Does this person actually have the values, the consistency, and the emotional availability that make a relationship work? Or did I just feel a surge of excitement because something about him triggered something deep in me that felt familiar? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Chemistry often feels so powerful because it is familiar, not because it's right, but because your brain recognizes the pattern. If you've been conditioned in past relationships to equate inconsistency with love, to chase approval, to fight for attention, to earn someone's affection, then when you meet someone who gives you just enough to keep you hooked, your brain lights up. It tells you, this is it. This is love. But it's not. It's just repetition. And the irony is, the very thing that pulls you in is often the thing that will eventually hurt you. Compatibility, on the other hand, is quieter. It doesn't hit you like a wave. It feels calm. It feels steady. It doesn't keep you up at night wondering what's going on because you know where you stand. The problem is, calm doesn't always feel exciting, especially if you've been trained to associate chaos with passion. That's why so many people overlook the ones who could actually give them the relationship they want. They're waiting for fireworks when what they need is a slow burn. To break the cycle, you have to start questioning your automatic reactions. The next time you feel that rush of chemistry, instead of just riding the high, pause and ask yourself, what exactly am I responding to? Is it the way he treats me? Or is it just the thrill of someone new paying attention to me? Does this person actually share my values, my vision for the future, and my desire for a committed relationship? Or am I projecting those qualities onto him because I'm caught up in the fantasy of what could be? It's also important to pay attention to how someone's actions align with your needs. Chemistry without consistency is a trap. Someone can make you feel alive in the moment, but leave you feeling anxious and insecure the rest of the time. And that's not love, that's emotional turbulence. Compatibility shows up when someone's actions match their words, when they show up consistently, when they make you feel safe instead of second, guessing everything. That doesn't always feel like a movie scene, but it's what creates the foundation for a real, lasting connection. Here's something else to think about. Chemistry often makes you ignore red flags. You'll find yourself rationalizing behavior you'd never tolerate from anyone else. He cancels plans last minute. Oh, he's just busy. He avoids talking about the future. He's just taking his time. He disappears for days and then comes back with a smile. That's just his way of needing space. You start convincing yourself that his inconsistency is something you can work through, all because the chemistry feels too good to walk away from. But ask yourself this: if someone's presence in your life makes you feel more confused than confident, more anxious than secure, is that really the kind of love you deserve? The answer is no. The right relationship won't leave you guessing. It won't make you question your worth. It will feel steady and, yes, at times, maybe even boring compared to the chaos you're used to. But that's only because stability is unfamiliar when you've been addicted to the highs and lows. The shift happens when you stop glorifying the spark and start valuing the flame that doesn't flicker when the wind blows. You begin to realize that what you actually want isn't that fleeting rush, but the calm, steady confidence of someone who shows up for you day after day. You start to retrain your brain to see excitement not in drama, but in the quiet joy of building something real with someone who matches your values and your effort. Because here's the reality: attraction is easy. Anyone can make your heart race for a night, a week, or even a few months. But compatibility, that takes a deeper kind of connection. It's built through shared values, mutual respect, and consistent effort over time. And when you start prioritizing that, the wrong men lose their power over you. The spark stops blinding you, and you start seeing clearly who actually deserves a place in your life. You know what keeps so many people stuck in the same painful cycle of relationships? It's this deep, almost unconscious habit of falling in love with potential instead of reality. You meet someone, and instead of seeing them for who they truly are in the moment, you start building a version of them in your mind, the version they could become. And while you're falling for that version, you're ignoring the very real, very present signs that they are not ready or willing to give you what you need. Think about it. You meet someone who seems charming, exciting, and different. Maybe they tell you they're not ready for a relationship right now, or they show you inconsistency in the way they communicate, but you hold on to those little glimpses of what they could be. That one thoughtful text, that one deep conversation, that one night where it felt like the two of you were the only people in the world, and suddenly you start telling yourself a story. They just need time. They've been hurt before. That's why they're guarded. If I can just show them that I'm different, they'll finally open up. Without realizing it, you start investing in their potential instead of the reality in front of you. The danger in this is that potential is like a mirage. It looks real, it feels close, but every step you take toward it just pulls you further into the desert. You find yourself working harder, trying more, giving more, all because you believe that if you just do enough, if you just love enough, they will change. But here's the truth. Someone's potential is not your responsibility. People don't grow because you see something in them. They grow because they choose to, on their own timeline. And often that timeline has nothing to do with you. When you overvalue potential, you start excusing behavior you would never tolerate from anyone else. You tell yourself that they're busy when they cancel plans at the last minute, that they're just not great at texting. When they disappear for days, that they're afraid of commitment, when they avoid having real conversations about the future. Deep down, you know these patterns don't feel good, but the story you've created in your mind that one day they'll wake up and finally realize you're the one keeps you hooked. This happens because so many of us have been conditioned to prove our worth in relationships. Maybe you've been taught directly or indirectly that love is something you earn, that if you just try hard enough, you'll finally be chosen. So when someone shows you flashes of connection but never truly commits, it triggers that old script. You think, if I stay patient, if I keep giving, if I keep showing them my value, eventually they'll see it. And in the process, you forget that love is supposed to be mutual, not a project you have to manage alone. The key to breaking this cycle is learning to separate who someone is from who you hope they'll become. It's asking yourself hard questions early on, even when the chemistry feels intense. Are their actions consistent with their words? Do they show up for me without me having to chase? Do they share the same values and vision for the future as I do? Or am I filling in the gaps with wishful thinking? Because I don't want to face the truth. And here's where it gets even more important: valuing yourself enough to walk away when someone shows you they are not ready. Because every time you stay in a situation where you are waiting for someone to change, you are sending a message to yourself: my needs don't matter as much as my hope for this person. And over time, that belief chips away at your self-worth. Healthy love doesn't require convincing. It doesn't make you sit in confusion wondering what you mean to someone. When you meet a person who is truly ready, their actions make you feel secure, not anxious. They show up consistently because they value you now, not some future version of you, not because you've proven yourself worthy, but simply because they see your value as it is. When you shift your focus from potential to reality, something powerful happens. You stop wasting your time on situations that drain you. You stop giving endless chances to people who have shown you through their behavior that they are not ready to meet you where you are. You start to see that love isn't about waiting for someone to evolve. It's about meeting someone who is already aligned with the life you want to build. And the beautiful thing is, when you start holding yourself to that standard, the way you show up in dating changes. You stop over investing in people who give you the bare minimum because you understand that your time, your energy, and your love are too valuable to be gambled on. Maybes. You start seeking out relationships where effort is matched, where respect is mutual, where you don't have to question where you stand. The truth is, potential feels intoxicating because it's full of possibility, but real connection is built in the present, in the consistent actions someone takes right now, not in the promises of what they might do someday. The sooner you learn to trust reality over fantasy, the sooner you'll attract the kind of love that doesn't just look good in your head, but feels good in your life. Boundaries are one of the most misunderstood parts of dating and relationships. Most people think of boundaries as building walls, shutting people out, or being cold and unapproachable. But that's not what boundaries are at all. Boundaries are not walls, they are filters. They are the invisible framework that teaches other people how to treat you, and they are one of the most powerful tools you can use to attract and maintain a healthy relationship. Without them, you become a magnet for chaos, inconsistency, and people who take more than they give. Think about this for a second. Every time you've been in a situation where you felt drained, unappreciated, or even disrespected, there's a good chance it wasn't because you didn't know what you wanted, but because you didn't enforce what you wanted. You may have seen the red flags, but ignored them because you didn't want to seem too much. You may have stayed quiet when something bothered you because you didn't want to risk losing the person. And slowly, without realizing it, you trained that person on exactly how to treat you by showing them what you were willing to tolerate. This is where so many people go wrong. They confuse having boundaries with pushing someone away, when in reality, boundaries are what keep the wrong people out and let the right people in. A boundary is simply a clear line that says, this is what's okay with me, and this is what isn't. It's not about punishment, it's about clarity. It's about protecting your energy and creating space where respect and love can actually grow. When you lack boundaries, you send the message, consciously or unconsciously, that your needs don't matter as much as keeping someone in your life. And when people sense that you will stay no matter what, they stop putting in the effort. It's human nature to value what is protected, and it's also human nature to take for granted what is freely given without any standards attached. The absence of boundaries creates an open field for inconsistency, for mixed signals, for being strung along by someone who gives you just enough attention to keep you invested, but never enough to build something real. But the moment you decide that your peace, your self-respect, and your time are non-negotiable, everything shifts. You start saying no to situations that drain you. You stop chasing someone who only calls when it's convenient for them. You stop rationalizing behavior that leaves you anxious and uncertain. And here's the beautiful part. The people who were never serious about you will disappear on their own. Boundaries don't chase people away. They reveal who was never meant to stay in the first place. Enforcing boundaries isn't about being aggressive. It's about being consistent. It's about calmly stating what you need and being willing to follow through if those needs aren't respected. For example, if someone repeatedly cancels plans at the last minute, you don't have to yell, cry, or beg them to change. You simply say, my time is valuable. If you can't respect it, we're not aligned, and you move forward. Boundaries are powerful, not because of the words you say, but because of the actions you take afterward. What makes boundaries challenging is the fear underneath them. Fear of rejection, fear of being alone, fear that setting standards will make you too difficult or hard to love. But here's the truth: people who truly value you will respect your boundaries. They'll appreciate the clarity because it shows them who you are and what you expect. And those who are only around for what they can take will naturally fade away because they won't be able to meet those standards. When you hold firm to your boundaries, you create an environment where mutual respect thrives. You teach people that your love, your time, and your attention are not free passes. They are privileges. And that changes the entire dynamic of your relationships. Instead of constantly wondering where you stand, you'll find yourself surrounded by people who are consistent, intentional, and genuinely invested in you. Boundaries also protect you from losing yourself in a relationship. When you don't have clear lines, it's easy to bend, to shrink, to compromise on things that actually matter to you just to keep the peace. Over time, you wake up and realize you've built a relationship where your needs are invisible, where your voice doesn't matter, and where you're left feeling empty despite giving everything. Boundaries prevent that. They keep you rooted in who you are and remind you that you deserve to be met in the middle, not dragged to the edge. It's also important to remember that boundaries aren't about control. They're not about trying to change someone else's behavior. They're about taking responsibility for your own choices. You can't control whether someone respects your boundaries, but you can control what you do when they don't. You can control whether you stay in situations that hurt you or whether you walk away in alignment with your values. When you start to truly embody your boundaries, you stop feeling afraid of losing people because you realize that anyone who leaves when you stand up for yourself was never there for the right reasons to begin with. You begin to attract people who see your strength as something to value, not something to exploit. And that's when relationships stop being battles for attention and start becoming partnerships built on mutual respect and understanding. The people who are meant for you will not be scared off by your standards. They will respect them, honor them, and meet you at that level. Boundaries are not about keeping love out. They're about creating the space where the right kind of love can actually come in. One of the most common mistakes people make in dating is confusing attention with intention. It's easy to get caught up in the rush when someone showers you with messages, calls you late at night, or makes grand gestures that make you feel special. The excitement is undeniable. Your phone lights up and your heart skips a beat. You start to think, this is it. This person really wants me. But attention and intention are not the same thing. And until you understand the difference, you'll keep finding yourself in situations that leave you disappointed and questioning your worth. Attention is easy. It doesn't cost much. Anyone can send a good morning text, like your photos, or comment on your stories. Anyone can pop in and out of your life when it's convenient for them. Intention, on the other hand, is about consistency, effort, and follow through. It's about someone not just showing up in the exciting moments, but staying present when things are calm, quiet, or even challenging. Intention is when someone's actions align with their words, when what they say they want is reflected in how they treat you, not just for a week or a month, but over time. Think back to a time when you were swept off your feet at the start of something new. Maybe they were texting you all day, calling you before bed, telling you how amazing you are. And in those early weeks, you convinced yourself that this was the beginning of something real. But then what happened? The calls got less frequent. The texts slowed down. The effort faded. And suddenly, you found yourself holding on to the memory of how it felt in the beginning, convincing yourself that if you just stayed patient, that version of them would come back. That's the danger of confusing attention with intention. You start building a relationship on moments instead of patterns. People who truly have intention are consistent. They don't just show up when it's convenient. They plan. They prioritize you. They make space for you in their life because they actually want to build something with you. Intention is quiet but steady. It doesn't need to overwhelm you with grand gestures because it's not trying to win you over temporarily. It's building trust over time. The problem is that we've been conditioned to romanticize attention. Movies, social media, and even past relationships have taught us to associate intensity with love. When someone showers us with attention early on, we mistake that high for a deep connection. We think that the way someone makes us feel in the moment is proof of their commitment. But attention without follow-through is nothing more than a performance. And performances always end. When you start to value intention over attention, your entire dating experience changes. You stop being impressed by constant texting and start paying attention to how someone actually invests in you. Are they making an effort to understand you? Do they show up when they say they will? Do they include you in their plans and make you feel like a priority? Or do they disappear for days and come back with a flirty message, expecting you to pick up right where you left off? It's also important to recognize how scarcity can distort your perspective. When someone gives you inconsistent attention, it creates a cycle that keeps you hooked. You start craving the validation of their next text, their next call, their next compliment. That craving makes you overlook the reality that this person isn't actually offering you anything stable. They've given you just enough to keep you waiting, but not enough to build something meaningful. The truth is, people show you who they are through their consistency. If someone wants you in their life in a real way, they won't make you guess. You won't have to decode mixed signals or analyze why their actions don't match their words. You won't have to wonder if you're being too needy for wanting clarity, because someone with intention provides clarity without you even having to ask. Learning to separate attention from intention requires you to slow down and observe patterns instead of getting swept up in the moment. It means stepping back and asking yourself, is this person showing me through their actions that they're serious? Or am I projecting seriousness onto them because I want it to be true? This self-awareness protects you from falling for situations where you're doing all the emotional work while they offer the bare minimum. And here's something powerful. When you start expecting intention, you naturally raise your standards. You stop responding to people who breadcrumb you with random texts. You stop investing energy in someone who only calls when they're bored or lonely. Instead, you save your time and attention for someone who is willing to match your effort. Someone who understands that real connection is built slowly through mutual respect and consistent action. Attention will always feel exciting in the beginning, but it's fleeting. Intention might not feel as dramatic, but it's what builds trust, security, and the kind of love that lasts. When you choose to value intention over attention, you stop chasing highs and start creating stability. And that shift doesn't just change the people you attract. It changes how you show up for yourself. Because once you understand your own worth, you realize that your heart deserves more than temporary sparks. It deserves the steady flame of someone who shows up day after day without hesitation. So many people don't realize how much power they give away in relationships. They sit back, waiting, hoping, wishing for someone to choose them, instead of realizing they should be the one doing the choosing. From the very start, they put themselves in the role of the applicant, as if love is some job interview where they need to prove their worth, show their best side, and pray to be accepted. And when you live in that dynamic, you stop seeing clearly. You stop asking the real questions that matter, because your focus is on, how do I make them like me? Instead of, do I even like them enough to let them into my world? Dating from a place of waiting to be chosen is exhausting. It makes you hyper aware of every little thing you say or do. You start analyzing texts, replaying conversations, bending yourself into a version of you that you think they'll find appealing. But here's the thing. Love is not about auditioning for someone. Love is about alignment. It's about two people recognizing that their values, their vision, and their efforts fit together to build something real. When you forget that, you set yourself up for relationships where you're constantly chasing approval instead of receiving mutual investment. Being the chooser means shifting your mindset completely. It means walking into every interaction with the quiet confidence that you are already enough, that you have nothing to prove, and that your energy, time, and love are valuable. When you take this position, you start observing instead of performing. You pay attention to whether their words match their actions, whether they show up when they say they will, whether their values line up with yours, whether they respect your boundaries and your standards without you having to explain them over and over. And this shift doesn't just change the way you date. It changes the kind of people you attract. When you stand firmly in your worth, You stop tolerating behavior that drains you. You stop overgiving to people who only meet you halfway. You stop wasting months or years trying to convince someone to be ready for you. Instead, you start asking the right questions. Does this person have the emotional availability to build something lasting? Do they share the same vision for the future? Are they consistent in the way they treat me? Are they investing in me with the same energy that I'm investing in them? The truth is, attraction without alignment is a trap. You can have all the chemistry in the world with someone, but if your core values, your vision, and your readiness for commitment aren't in sync, you will always feel like you're running in circles. When you're focused only on being chosen, you ignore these misalignments because you don't want to lose the spark. You tell yourself stories. They'll change. They just need time. If I'm patient, they'll realize what they have. But being the chooser means you stop negotiating your standards just to keep someone around. Being the chooser also means you give yourself permission to walk away without guilt. You no longer stay in situations that feel confusing, inconsistent, or one-sided because you know that your value doesn't come from being validated by someone else. You understand that walking away from the wrong person creates space for the right person to show up. It's not about ego, it's about self-respect. And here's the beautiful thing. When you step into this role, dating becomes less stressful and more empowering. Instead of being consumed with thoughts like, do they like me? Your focus shifts to, do I like them enough to share my energy with them? Are they showing me the qualities that make me feel safe, respected, and valued? You're no longer afraid of being alone because you know that being alone is better than being with someone who doesn't see your worth. This doesn't mean you become cold or guarded. It doesn't mean you close yourself off from connection. It means you stay open, but you stay discerning. You know what you want and what you will not tolerate. You understand that your time and your heart are investments, and not everyone earns access to them. That level of clarity changes the way you move. It changes the way you respond to red flags. It keeps you from overextending yourself for people who aren't willing to meet you at your level. Being the chooser isn't about arrogance. It's about awareness. It's about recognizing that you are not at the mercy of someone else's decision. You have a say. You are the one who decides who gets to stay, who gets access, and who doesn't. And when you start dating from that place, the entire dynamic shifts. The people who are not ready to step up will quietly drift away because they know they can't get away with giving you less than you deserve. The ones who truly see your value will rise to meet you, not because you begged for it, not because you proved yourself, but because they recognize the strength in someone who knows their worth. And when you finally embrace that mindset, you stop settling for almosts. You stop accepting situations that leave you in limbo. You stop waiting to be chosen, and you start choosing wisely, intentionally, and from a place of self-respect that sets the tone for every connection you build. Your self-worth sets the tone for every relationship you have, whether you realize it or not. It's the silent language that tells people how to treat you. It's in the way you carry yourself, the standards you hold, the behavior you allow, and the boundaries you enforce. If you believe you are worthy of love, respect, and consistency, you will never settle for less than that. But if deep down you doubt your value, you'll find yourself accepting crumbs, mistaking chaos for passion, and holding on to people who give you just enough to keep you hoping, but never enough to make you feel secure. So much of what we experience in relationships begins with how we see ourselves. If you don't feel worthy, you'll explain away bad behavior because part of you believes you should be grateful for whatever attention you get. When someone pulls away, you'll chase because you think their distance means you're not good enough and you want to prove that you are. When someone gives you the bare minimum, you'll rationalize it, telling yourself they're busy, they've been hurt, they're just not ready, instead of admitting that you deserve more than excuses. And the saddest part is that you won't even realize you're teaching them how to treat you by accepting their inconsistency without consequence. But when you understand your self-worth, the entire dynamic changes. You stop seeing love as something you need to earn, and you start seeing it as something that should be mutual, balanced, and healthy. You stop auditioning for people. You stop bending over backward to be enough for someone who doesn't even know what they want. Instead, you show up as you are, confident, grounded, and clear about what you deserve, and you let people rise to meet you. The truth is, self-worth isn't about arrogance or thinking you're better than anyone else. It's about knowing on the deepest level that you are already enough, that your value doesn't come from being chosen, but from being yourself. When you carry that belief, you don't chase validation because you already validate yourself. You don't settle for inconsistent behavior because you know that real connection requires effort, respect, and reliability. And you don't cling to someone who treats you like an option because you understand that your time and energy are too valuable to waste on someone who can't see your worth. Building that kind of self-worth starts with awareness. Start noticing the stories you tell yourself. Do you believe that love is something that always has to be hard? Do you find yourself thinking you have to look a certain way, act a certain way, or achieve certain things before you deserve to be loved the way you want to be loved? Those beliefs are not truths. They're just old scripts you've been carrying. And until you challenge them, they will keep running the show, guiding you into relationships that only reflect your fears instead of your true value. The next step is to align your actions with that self-worth. It's one thing to say you know what you deserve, but it's another to walk away from anything that doesn't meet that standard. It's another to enforce your boundaries consistently, even when it's hard, even when your emotions are telling you to stay. Every time you choose yourself, every time you say no to someone who doesn't respect you, every time you stop answering calls from someone who only shows up when it's convenient for them, every time you walk away from a situation that feels wrong, you're reinforcing that belief, I am worthy of more. And here's what happens when you truly embody that belief. The wrong people stop sticking around. They sense they can't play games with you, that they can't offer you half effort and still have your time and attention. And the right people, the ones who are ready to show up fully, are drawn to that energy. Because confidence is magnetic, clarity is magnetic. People are naturally drawn to those who know their value and aren't afraid to honor it. Self-worth also changes how you show up emotionally in relationships. When you value yourself, you no longer fear being alone. You don't feel the need to force connections or hold on to situations that don't feel right, because you trust that walking away doesn't mean you've lost. It means you've made room for something better. You approach dating from a place of curiosity instead of desperation. You take your time. You observe. You choose instead of waiting to be chosen. And that shift alone protects you from so much unnecessary heartbreak. The beautiful thing about strengthening your self-worth is that it doesn't just change your love life. It transforms every area of your life. You start setting higher standards in friendships, at work, in the way you take care of yourself. You stop apologizing for your needs and start honoring them. And over time, you create a life where your relationships, your environment, and your choices all reflect the truth. You've embraced that you are enough and that you deserve love, respect, and consistency, not as a reward for proving yourself, but simply because you are you. At the end of the day, everything we've talked about, from understanding that chemistry isn't compatibility to letting go of someone's potential, to setting clear boundaries, to valuing intention over fleeting attention, to stepping into the power of being the chooser, and finally owning your self-worth, all leads to one truth. You have more control over your love life than you've been taught to believe. You are not unlucky in love. You are not doomed to repeat the same patterns. What you attract and what you allow are direct reflections of the standards you set for yourself. The moment you decide that your heart, your time, and your energy are precious, the moment you refuse to compromise on the respect, consistency, and care you deserve, everything shifts. The wrong people will naturally drift away because they can't survive in a space where clarity and confidence live. And the right person, the one who is truly aligned with your values and your vision, will not only recognize your worth, but will match it day after day. Love is not about chasing, proving, or waiting. It's about showing up as your most authentic self, choosing wisely, and letting your standards act as a filter for the kind of love you want to build. When you stop settling for less, when you start honoring yourself at the deepest level, you don't just change your relationships, you change your life.